No public comment cards.
Thank you. We will now adjourn to closed session for 2 items. Government Code 54957, evaluation of employee, superintendent, president. 2, Government Code Section 54957, public employee appointment, executive director, economic and workforce development, police sergeant. The Wednesday, November 15th, 2017 regular business meeting of the Pasadena Area Community College District will come to order. The board met in closed session on 2 items, and there is no reportable action. Roll call, please.
Dr. Selvage,
Here.
Dr. Fellow, Mr. Osterling,
Here.
Ms. Brown, Mr. Hilsman,
Here.
Mr. Martin,
Here.
Ms. Waugh,
Here.
Ms. Ekshian.
Here.
Thank you. Trustee Hilsman, will you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do any trustees want to reorder any of the agenda items? If not, are there any objections to the agenda? The agenda is approved. Introductions and recognitions. Dr. Verdian?
We don't have any.
Okay, thank you. Public comment on non-agenda items. Trustee Osterling, do we have any speaker cards for items not on the agenda?
We have 2 speakers for non-agenda items tonight. And our first speaker that I will call up is Martin Enriquez. Martin, you know the drill. You get 3 minutes. I'll give you a 30-second warning. Fire
Thank you,
away.
sir. Honorable trustees and assembled persons, in the American Civil War, over 600,000 human lives were sacrificed. In the aftermath, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments were passed. I will speak plainly. The 2012 redistricting of the PCC trustees areas was done in error. The 2012 plan is against the California Constitution, 2, against the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, and 3, counter to local rules, that is to say, the Pasadena City Ordinances of 1992. I will read from the NAACP brief in Gill versus Whitford. I do this as a loyal lancer of PCC. I hope you see how this applies to the BCC BOT areas. In the introduction, it states, as Judge Kaczynski of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth District Circuit recognized 30 years ago, quote, elected officials engage in the single-minded pursuit of incumbency can run roughshod over the rights of protected minorities, close quote from Garza versus County of Los Angeles. In continuing, and they do this, open quotes, it strengthens the grips of incumbents at the expense of emerging minorities, unquote. This is what happened here at PCC in the board redistricting plan of 2012. I just been bringing up these issues because you, the board, could fix this. You don't have to wait until 2021. And I've already cited the Lulak versus Perry of 2006 to that effect. And I will continue my civic duty in bringing these issues to you, and I hope in the spirit of friendship that we
30
will fix,
seconds,
we will
Mr.
fix
Enriquez.
these things. Long live the American Republic.
Thank you, Mr. Enriquez. Our next speaker is Gloria Hughes. Gloria Hughes. Welcome, Ms. Hughes. You'll have 3 minutes, and I'll give you a warning when you have 30 seconds left.
Good evening, everyone. This is all new to me. This is my first time being here. I didn't even know I had to come up. I just thought I could write down my questions and hand it over to the person. Someone would read them for me. So it was just a couple of questions I had. So PCC is not new to me. I graduated from PCC with 2 degrees, legal assistant and associate of arts, excuse me, business. So so you have to bear with me. You can cut me off at any time because I don't know what I'm doing anyway, but I do know what I'm concerned about. I'm concerned about the hiring of employees here at PCC. And you have my questions that I passed over?
Ms. Hughes, I have your questions, and if
Okay.
you'd like, I'd be happy to read them
Would
out
you-
loud
would you
on your
please?
behalf.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so the first question is, who has final say on each hiree? The next question is, are positions hired from in-house first candidates, then outside, or vice versa?
Okay.
And the third question is, what is the ratio for hiring of blacks in the past 3 years?
All right.
Those are your questions.
Those are my questions.
Yeah.
Those are my concerns. Is there any way for me to just leave that with you to get answers, or do I need to expound on it?
You still have time left, and you're free to expound further.
Okay, that's my concern from what things I have learned about the hiring process and some of the hirees here that wondering how, what policies or what procedures took place to make the hiring possible or not possible for those that I've heard that have applied and didn't get positions. I'm just concerned that maybe one day in the future I may want to apply. So I'd like to know exactly, what you base that on and who has the last word in saying whether or not I would be able to be hired or not hired, and what are you basing it on? So that's what I would like to know, if you don't mind. That may clear up some of my misunderstanding of the things that has already happened here at PCC that I'm not sure I agree with. Thank you very much.
Ms. Hughes? Yes. The comment in this part of the board meeting is for items that aren't on the agenda. And because a discussion of this has not been agendized and other people don't know that we would be discussing it, we're not permitted to respond to your questions tonight. But I just spoke with Dr. Verdian briefly, and he will be happy to answer these questions, which were very clear and concise, I must say. And he can, if you contact his office, he'll make sure that you get answers to exactly the questions you asked.
Thank you, I appreciate
Yeah.
that. Would there be anything in regards to this title at all on the agenda for tonight?
No.
Okay,
No, this is a non-agenda item.
okay,
And
great.
Ms. Hughes, thank you for coming, and I will give this speaker card to Dr. Verdian, and it has her contact information on it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I look forward to your call. Thank you.
Approval of minutes. Do I hear a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor? Passes 5-0, 2 absent, and the student trustee voting in favor. Consent items. Students. First consent item under item D, approval of student travel PCC TRIO programs CEO policy seminar.
Move to approve.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Oh, it's consent item. All in favor? Passes 5-0 with 2 trustees absent and the student trustee voting in favor. Consent items. Instruction. There's one item. Do any of the trustees want to have a discussion of this one item? If not,
Well, move to approve.
I second.
all in favor?
Turn on your green light.
Sorry. Green.
Passes 5-0, 2 trustees absent, and the student trustee voting in favor.
President Selvage, I do want to make a comment on this. So I was really pleased to see this agenda item. It's digital college as well as the OER, OEI were big discussions at the Board of Governors meeting this last Monday, and so I want to thank the faculty and academic senate for moving forward on this. This is great.
I'll second that one, that comment.
Consent items, business. We have 24 items. Do any trustees want to pull items out for individual discussion and vote?
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor? This passes 5-0, 2 trustees absent, and the student trustee voting in favor. Consent items, personnel. We have 4 items. Do any trustees want to have individual discussion of any of these items? Hearing none, is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Seconded by? Trustee Wah, did you second?
Correct.
Yeah, correct. Okay. Vote, please. Passes 5-0 with 2 trustees absent. Thank you. Action items recommended for approval. Resolution number 576 to order biennial governing board election. Dr. Verdian?
As you know, the board had passed a resolution to move the elections from November to June. The next elections will be held on June 5th, 2018. And according to ordinance, we need to inform the general public 180 days ahead that this election will be taking place on June 5th. And this is the resolution, and we recommend that the board approve this resolution.
I have a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
I have a
Trustee
very
Osterling.
quick question. Am I correct to assume that the June 5th date is, coincides with the statewide election?
Yes, it does.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Martin?
Just a quick comment. I'm sure this is all exactly legally proper. I'm just used to seeing the trustee areas listed that are up for election, and I don't think the resolution includes that. but-
Our understanding from our legal counsel is that we don't list the areas, but we list the number of seats up for re-election.
Okay?
Any further discussion? All in favor? Passes 5-0 with 2 abstentions, and the student trustee voting in favor. Authorization to transmit first quarterly financial status report.
We have an extra.
It is our recommendation that the Board of Trustees approve the transmission of the first quarterly financial status report to the Chancellor's office. There are no significant changes because this is just the first quarter.
Do I hear a motion?
Move to approve.
Second?
Any discussion? Being none, please vote. Passes 5-0 with 2 absent, and the student trustee voting in favor. Approval of additions, deletions, and modifications to the credit and non-credit curriculum.
We recommend that the board approve those changes to the curriculum, which includes new courses, deletions, and also some modifications.
Move approval.
Second?
Dr. Juni, is anything you want to add to that?
We'll answer any questions if you'd like. I will say that one of the things that's in there is a new associate degree for transfer, which speaks well for the faculty in developing that.
Which, or what major is that?
It's in nutrition.
Nutrition dietetics.
Do I hear a motion?
I move.
And I second it.
Okay. Is there any discussion, any further questions? Vote, please.
My daughter will be happy.
Passes 5-0 with 2 trustees absent. And student trustee voting in favor. Selection of presidential search firm. I've got a handout here, which is available at the table where everybody entered today. And oops, okay, I'm going to pass it out here. It's a little handout that we talked about briefly in the ad hoc committee to kind of help us as we're discussing the different firms here. To refresh everybody's recollection of how we got to where we are and where we are on the selection of a search firm to assist us in the presidential search. We had 5 firms that responded to the RFP. We had each of those firms present in person a presentation to the board on their proposal. And the handout that I have passed out here identifies the name of the firm, the individuals who appeared here, and the service that they are offering, and a brief sort of summary bullet point of what their fee would be for the service that they're offering. The order here, I think that's the order in which they appeared and made their presentations to the full board. After the presentation to the full board, I appointed an ad hoc committee. The ad hoc committee, in the absence of Vice President Fellow, consisted of me, clerk, trustee Osterling, and Linda Waugh, the immediate past president of the Board of Trustees. And the 3 of us contacted the references that were provided by the firms that made the proposals. We talked with at least 1, if not 2, references for each one of these firms. We had several questions that we asked the references, and all of these references were trustees. We wanted, as trustees, to get the trustees' perspective of how these firms had served them on a recent presidential search. Among the points that we wanted to ask them are, well, what's the most important thing that we ought to consider? You've worked with the firms. What do you think the most important thing is that we ought to consider, and whether or not we hire them? We asked them about how the startup for the search went, how they, how successfully they came up with a position description, which is extremely important, how they obtained community input, which is very important to us here at PCC, how the outreach to prospective candidates went for the firm for which we were asking for the reference, how the initial screening was handled. We have a very carefully described screening process in our bylaws. And then finally, in general, how the firm assisted them as trustees and the rest of their board at the point when there were semifinalists and finalists, which is a very important phase. So those were the things that we asked these other trustees at other colleges. The phone calls, well, they probably lasted 20 minutes, sometimes 30 minutes with these trustees. So it was a very thorough discussion with each one of these people that gave us input on the firms. And to real quickly run down the 5 firms here, RPA, they offered a service which consisted of the presidential search. Their fee is 1/3 of the annual starting salary, but not less than $68,500. PPL, they offered a presidential search. Their fee proposal was $28,000 plus up to $4,000 in travel. They offered no charge for additional search if the first round of search fails. So if the first round of the search fails, or if at some point during the process we decide we need to go back and change something to get a better result, they said they would do the additional search or extension at no additional cost. ACCT, $35,000 fee, excuse me, plus travel expenses. CCSS, they offered a presidential search, $30,000 plus travel, printing, and advertising, and they would only charge for direct out-of-pocket expenses if the first round fails to result in a hire. And this is, some people refer to this as a failed search, but what it is a situation in which maybe you have 2 or 3 finalists, and they go to the board, and the board decides that it can't come to a sufficient agreement or approval, and we have to go out and recycle. And then CBT, that's College Brain Trust, they offered a service which was both a presidential search and what has been referred to as an onboarding. That is a coaching and other types of assistance when a new president arrives to help the president and the board work together successfully. Their fee, in the simplest terms, it's a 1-year contract which they offer for $60,000. They would bill at $5,000 per month. The billing at $5,000 a month would continue through the entire 12 months. At the end, excuse me, at the end of the selection for the president, whatever was remaining out of the 12 months, if it was a 5-month search to get a new president, if it was a 6-month search, you would have the remaining months out of the 12 months at $5,000 per month for the onboarding activity. If with CBT there was a so-called failed search and you had to go back out again, they would move ahead, but at the $5,000 per month. So that's kind of a summary of where we stand with these firms, what they're offering, what the fee structure is. We have come to the conclusion, the ad hoc committee, that there are probably 2 front runners. But tonight, any trustee can ask any question on any firm. They can bring up any opinion on any firm, and so it's completely open. I'd like Trustee Wah and then Trustee Osterling to kind of summarize in general terms for the board what we found on the check-in of references. And, well, Trustee Osterling or Wah, should I mention right now who we think the front runners are at this point?
So the ad hoc committee, first of all 5 of these firms are specialized in this area of search, and I think that they're all competent and capable. Having said that, as Trustee Selvage said, we came up with 2 finalists in our mind that we're going to recommend consideration. having said that, that doesn't rule out a consideration by our fellow trustees of any of the other three firms that weren't the finalists in our mind, but we're just passing along the reference checking and the questions that we asked of the references and of these firms. So the two finalists that, in the view of the ad hoc committee, are PPL, they're the second firm listed here, and the second firm is the fifth firm, CBT. And Dr. Selvage, it's up to you, but I would suggest that we have Trustee Waugh talk about CBT and why they're one of the finalists. Is that
That's fine.
okay?
Yeah, so we did, as Dr. Selvage said, we did interview and we did reference checking for all of the, all 5 firms that came to us, and they all got really excellent references. And so even though, you know, we may have had questions from the presentations, I think that the trustees who participated and gave reference checking for those firms just really were very thorough and talked about, you know, what worked and what didn't work for them and why this was a really good firm. So on CBT, the College Brain Trust, Sandra Serrano is the recommended consultant for that firm to work with us. And Sandra Serrano is recently retired president from, let's see, Bakersfield, right? Kern County, okay? Kern County? Oh, Chancellor, that's right, sorry. Chancellor of Kern County. Sandra also has an outstanding reputation throughout the entire community college system. She's worked very closely with the state chancellors, Chancellor Scott, Chancellor Bryce Harris, and Chancellor Eloy Oakley. So, and it was, I think, Dr. Verdeen, you would probably agree, probably one of the very top chancellors in our entire system. Has great respect throughout the whole system for her, just her ability to work with people. She also was one of the chancellors who worked on the training programs for the chancellors, for the CEO training programs in the state. So I particularly liked that this was a good consultant. And I think one of the things that was interesting when we did the reference checking is almost everyone said all the firms do a good job, but it's very dependent on who the actual person who's assigned to you, how that person works and how well they will work with the board. And so you might remember Sandra did considerable homework on what had happened with the board and had noted that we'd had a little bit of turnover that we needed to really address. And so this pricing package that they put together is a little bit different. It's non-traditional. So they're asking for $5,000 per month and for a contract for 12 months. So this includes not just the president's search, but also the onboard training. And we at the, among the board and with Dr. Verdeen, we've talked about how important it is to have that training to get a new superintendent really acclimated into this new college that they'll be working with and with the different people. And we also had engaged former State Chancellor Bryce Harris, who is working with us and with the board to help us identify some things and to kind of help us work to have a smooth transition with Dr. Verdeen leaving. And it's someone Dr. Verdeen himself recommended because he is also someone who that throughout the system has a good reputation, can work with everyone. So Dr. Harris has worked with Dr. Serrano for quite some time and also has great respect for her. So one of the things that we looked at was, you know, almost everyone is charging about the same thing for a search. It's about $30,000. CBT assumes that they're going to get this done in 6 months and there will be roughly another 6 months left. And so if we look at what we would end up paying probably for some onboarding, my guess is it would be maybe about that. I don't know if it would be much less, but I think even when we did a little bit of follow-through coaching or follow-through onboarding, even after we hired Dr. Verdian, I think we had some amount of money pretty close to that. So the approach that Sandra took, and that she's proposing, is that CBT actually will do the coaching. So they actually coach while they're recruiting for the best candidate. And so so they're constantly looking throughout the system and polling to get people to come to the college. And in the meantime, they're also coaching them to see whether or not it's a good fit. And I thought that was a really interesting approach. And once I heard her say that and I saw her response, I understood what that difference was. So they're not waiting to do the coaching after the search has been completed and the president has been hired. So they're doing it throughout because they feel that that's the best way to bring the best candidate into to the board. So for me, in my mind, I feel that that while this is an odd pricing model, it wasn't something I was used to, I do feel like Sandra is that kind of person who will have great outreach throughout the system. I think people will gravitate to her and ask lots of questions about our college to see whether or not it's a good fit. I think she has the right skills. She knows chancellors, presidents, vice presidents throughout the whole system, and she'll be able to quickly ascertain if this is a good fit for us and where, and make some recommendations where it's not. So she's constantly doing that coaching. And so for me, in my mind, we talk about the trustees' main roles. And so one of the most important things that we will do is hire and fire our superintendent. And I think that we all agree, and I think our communities agree, that making the right decision, taking our time and being thoughtful and really putting a lot of emphasis on searching for the right candidate, ensuring that's the right fit, is probably something that will benefit our entire communities, our college communities. So for that reason, I am recommending CBT be considered.
Trustee Osterlin, would you like to speak about PPL?
Well, let me, rather than speak about PPL, let me just offer some additional thoughts on what Trustee Waugh just said. We spent the most amount of time on CBT just making sure we understood how their process and their cost structure would work, because it was unique. And on one hand, it is apples to apples, because while their proposal calls for the search and the onboarding as a combined package at we think roughly a cost of $60,000, PPL, the other finalist, would charge $28,000 for the search plus travel, and CBT, by the way, also charges for travel and expenses, so that's a level playing field. But PPL at $28,000 is actually roughly equivalent to the search portion of CBT, and whether we went with CBT or PPL or any of the other candidates, I think we're all committed to the idea that having an onboarding or an executive coaching session with the new superintendent is a good idea. So that cost, while it's not included in these other searches, we would contract for that with others at possibly roughly the same cost. So in one sense, the contract that they propose is not apples to apples, but it could be. There are some situations where we could end up spending more money on the CBT approach, and that doesn't knock them out of consideration. They're still a finalist. And that is, in the case of PPL, if for whatever reason we don't hire a superintendent at the end of the first round, they keep going and their cost doesn't change. Whereas if we fail to select a superintendent at the end of this first round for CBT, they continue to charge at a monthly rate. Now, it does cap out at the end of 12 months, but hypothetically, if we had to go back again and it took 11 or 12 months, we would still have to spend money for onboarding and executive coaching. So there's a scenario, and hopefully it's the most likely scenario, where if we were to hire CBT and the first round is successful, probably the overall cost is roughly the same as PPL. But if it were necessary to go back and do a second round, the CBT proposal would end up costing us more money. Now, I don't want to be penny wise and pound foolish, and we're actually very fortunate to have Trustee Waugh on our board. She is one of the most active people that I know in both at the California Community College League level, and serving on the Board of Trustees at the state level, but also at the national level in the Diversity Committee. And the benefit that we get from her active involvement is she really knows who these different folks are. And she is passionate about Sandra, and I defer to her much more considerable experience with our fellow trustees and chancellors statewide. So my only follow-up comment is that this could potentially end up costing us more money, and B, we asked several times, and the answer was no every time we asked, can we do the onboarding or the executive coaching with a consultant of our own choosing? And the answer was no. This is a package deal. So again, in my mind, that doesn't knock them out of consideration, but it is potentially the same cost. It's potentially the higher cost, and we our hands are tied in terms of the onboarding side of it. But they have a good list, Trustee Waugh, of consultants that would provide the executive coaching part of their contract, including former Chancellor Bryce Harris. So those are the economic side. And Trustee Selvage, I'm going to defer to you on comments on PPL, because you were more actively involved in reference checking and so forth.
I'm sorry, can I ask a follow-up question?
Yeah, please do.
You said something, and I had zoned out on an earlier statement. The last thing you said about the consulting and Bryce Harris, could you just repeat that for me?
So again, with CBT, it's a package deal.
Got
They will
that.
not uncouple, and we will do the onboarding and executive coaching with them to the extent there's still months left in their 12-month contract. And they have a list of 60 consultants that we could choose from, and that list includes Bryce Harris. We're consulting with him currently, but that's under contract with ACCT.
Got it, thank you.
CCLC?
I apologize, I was
No, not at
off
all.
on another thought that you said.
And I did want to just say that, of the chancellors that are that Sandra indicated that they would bring in, some of them are some of the most highly thought of chancellors who are recently retired and have been working in the system as consultants. So I think they felt that, they would be, while Sandra could be a consultant if we chose, or if the selected candidate from our presidential search decided that they could work better with another onboard consultant, then they would have a good selection to choose from. So thank you, Trustee Osterling. I concur with what you have said.
With respect to PPL, they were represented by Ben Duran and Dean Colley when they made their presentation. And I went back and looked at the tape of the board meeting and the tape of their presentation. thing that struck me was that after having gone through the references for all 5 of these, that some of the concerns that came up and some of the points that were made about CBT were also contained in their proposal. They had done extremely thorough research on PCC, and they pointed out that one of their emphasis was initially getting to know the board and getting to understand how the board works and how that might affect the type of candidate that they would recommend. Both Ben Duran and Dean Colley were former college presidents. They pointed out that they would be available to do the follow-up, and what we had asked for when we went out looking for proposals was a proposal for the president's search. They did not include specifically onboarding after the hiring of the president, but they did emphasize that during the whole process, beginning with their consultation with the board to get an understanding from the board how this board operates and who might be appropriate, that they effectively were doing what I understood CBT to say that they would do during that phase as well. With PPL, we could hire, if we go with PPL for the search, they would offer to do the onboarding. If we go with PPL, we could go ahead and hire somebody else of our choosing. And I don't think that the dollar figures that the dollars that we spend if we were to go with PPL or CBT in the end are likely to be a determining factor. Finally, with respect to the combining of the combining right now of the contract for the presidential search and the onboarding, which is a requirement of CBT, but not a requirement of PPL. As we were discussing this, the ad hoc committee, it seemed to become more apparent to me that we ought to spend more time than we have had an opportunity to spend on figuring out exactly how we're going to do that onboarding and what we want that onboarding to include than we have the opportunity now, because basically we were not expecting the proposal of the type that CBT proposed. So this is why I would favor PPL. Trustee Martin, well, now the 3 of us, we sat through the meeting, we saw the same presentations you saw, we got the proposals, the written proposals, and we've gone, I went back over it again. So Trustee Hilsman, Trustee Martin, do you want to add anything or ask any questions?
You can go, or I can go, whatever you'd like.
Go for it.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the committee's hard work, and it's obvious to me that we have a couple good ones here. Been through a few of these searches, and there's a lot of important elements to it. Obviously, their ability to make sure that the process is transparent and open to the community, and I think all these firms, and especially the 2 you've selected, will do a great job of that. I think recruiting and their connections to people who may be interested in the job that aren't thinking of filling out an application or another unknown that we really don't know. PPL's been connected into the business for quite some time. Sandra Serrano, CBT, obviously was recently there and has an organization behind her. So for my way of thinking, that one, I'm kind of neutraling that one out. There's no way for me to know which one's going to tap the right person inside that the other one wouldn't know about or anything like that. At the end of the day, after months of work and numerous hours and meetings and screenings and people and ups and downs, there's 7 of us in a room someplace sitting around trying to figure out what we're going to do. And there's actually an 8th person in the room, and it's going to be whoever we pick. And so the other element that sometimes I think gets overlooked is how we feel in a relationship with whomever it is, and how those individuals will know and have the wisdom when to just sit there silently and let the board talk and work through their issues, and when they need to actively engage the board and say, hey, have you thought of this or that, or maybe here's an approach we can take on how to get through parsing this down. Last night I'm sitting on the couch and my daughter comes up to me and asks me a question. She goes, Dad, do you think I'm a type A personality? And I looked at her.
She's your daughter.
I looked at her and I said, I think you're the kind of personality who knows how to move a project when you need to move a project. And I think you're the kind of personality who knows how to be a friend and knows how to listen and knows how to let something go and knows when to just enjoy the moments. And I want you to be that kind of person. I want you to have a greater wisdom that can focus in and yet at times focus out. And yes, do details and at sometimes understand the big picture. And, you know, I think we're looking for, and all we have was this snippet of a presentation. So I was looking for, if I'm sitting in a room with these two gentlemen, or that gentleman, or this Dr. Serrano, how's that interaction going to feel to me, and how is this person going to say the right statement at the right time to move the discussion forward, or maybe give us the wisdom that we need to go out again, or whatever it is. You know, and that, and how I'm feeling about them in that presentation might be different than how you all were feeling when you talked to them. But that was the element that I was looking for in that kind of presentation. A little bit of give and take and back and forth. So in that context, in some ways, I thought Dr. Serrano, in the unusual approach, had an opportunity, because we sat here and did that with her a little bit, where the other ones was basically their just standard presentation. And I felt really comfortable in the give and take that I was having with her. I said, you know, I like the way this is going. I like this as kind of an open conversation, and she's listening to what we're saying, and she's saying things, and we're kind of listening, and it's going back and forth a little bit. And I felt really, really comfortable with that. And the last thing that I thought was just really huge, it's kind of been mentioned, was, you know, they're all going to say, and they all are because they're good professionals, they all are going to listen to the board, and they are going to work with the board, and either one are going to do a great job. But somehow CBT had an understanding unique to this college that finding a superintendent who we hope can be here for some amount of time, to the level of the fact that they don't even want to do the contract unless they could be assured that this onboarding is going to happen. They were able to identify that is so critical to this college with this history in this position today, and that spoke volumes to me. I mean, I really appreciated that they had that thinking, which I would say is focused out, away from the search, and said, what we're really looking for here in your circumstance today where you are, you need someone who's going to be here for some time because we've just gone through a little too much. And so, not having known the benefit of what the committee heard, I just felt through that exchange with her at the end and knowing how critical the certain individual was, that she just seemed to graduate to the top for me in that relationship. So, I mean, I would strongly support CBT as my first choice. If a majority of the board wanted to go with the other gentleman, or even one of the others that we didn't consider, you know, I understand there's good reason for that, but I just felt very, very comfortable with Dr. Serrano, and I greatly appreciated the way they had approached us in a very unique way.
Trustee Hilsman.
Well, thank you. And John, regarding your conversation with your daughter, you sound like you're a great dad. I'm sure you are. that's a challenging conversation.
And I think in a way, I brought it up because obviously that's what I think we're looking for
Yeah,
here, a little
yeah.
bit.
Well, first of all, thanks to the ad hoc committee. I mean, I think it's, from what I've heard, you've done a really good job, and I'm in total agreement with you on your choices of the two finalists. You know, in my view, I'm new. I haven't been through the process before, but it seems to me that this is one of the most important decisions that we're going to be making as trustees as we go down the path. I also agree with Jim's analysis on the economics of it, and Ross, that the money shouldn't be our primary consideration here. And it seems to me with both of these outfits, we have enough options that I feel comfortable with. I have to agree with John about Dr. Serrano. I had that same impression that there was some back and forth here, and that she would be a good person to work with. I also liked the fact that she kind of challenged the board to say, let's do this right, let's work this together, let's make sure we have the right choice, let's look at all the factors here, onboarding, and so I appreciated that very much too. And I have had some community members come up to me and kind of vouch for her just off the cuff. I guess my concern would be, first of all, that we reach a pretty good consensus on this as a board. I think that if we go into this with some strong disagreements, I don't think that's good. I think we need to iron that out before we make a decision. I would be prepared to support Sandra tonight. I guess my question would be about our timeline for this process. You know, theoretically, we could have the finalists back for a more thorough discussion. I'm not sure exactly what we would ask them. I don't have any specific questions. Again, I kind of go on a feeling, as John did, and I do trust Linda's experience in this, and some of the other folks that I've heard of. So again, I would be willing to support Sandra tonight so that we can move ahead. But I would also be open to having them back, do another run through, if it doesn't impede our progress here, and if it's within the timeline, the scope that we're talking about.
Yeah, we're not at a point for a motion yet. Jim?
So, Hoyt, I would only respond to one thing that you said. I would encourage us here, unfortunately, Tony and Berlinda are absent,
Yeah.
but I would encourage us to make a decision tonight, because our next meeting is a month from now. And so if we have presentations and then a decision, we've lost a month. I think we're still in a good shape on our timeline, but I would prefer to see us make a decision tonight, select the finalist, the firm that we're going to use, and there'll be some time necessary to finalize and execute a contract. And then what we'd like to do is have the firm that we've selected make a presentation to us at our next meeting, which again is going to be in mid-December, present a timeline and whatever else, and get underway. Otherwise, we're into January, and now we might be starting to get behind the timeline that we need to be on.
Oh, Ross, can I just respond up
Yeah,
here?
go ahead.
It looks like we have 3-2 here, or at least.
Well, I don't
that's-
think we've heard from trustee Action yet either.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah.
So I guess judging from the presentations that I did here during the past Board of Trustees meeting, I deemed all of the search firms qualified, and they did seem very professional. I'm not very experienced with, I have no experience in like search firm, so this is very new to me, but I did deem the qualities that various trustees brought up today, and I believe we should be searching we should be selecting a search firm that understands the social atmosphere of the campus and will be flexible in their selection. Thank you.
Oh, I agree with Trustee Osterling that, and I share your concern, Trustee Hilsman, that we keep the process moving forward. I don't think, my personal opinion is that we don't need to have another presentation or response to questions or whatever. We did Linda and Jim and I, we covered it pretty well with all the references that we checked, and they were almost universally positive, but some of them were more in different areas. So having said that, at this point I will open the board floor for a motion.
I would like to move that we offer a contract to the Community Brain Trust, CPT, for our search firm.
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, vote please. Passes 5. Passes 5
And a half.
0 with 2 absent. Student trustee voting in favor. Thank you. Now, the way things will unfold at this point, Dr. Verdian has informed me that we will be able to, having selected CBT, he has informed me that we will be able within virtually 48 hours or 24 hours to have a contract ready. And we had discussed this before the meeting, that this will enable us to contact, I will inform the firm tomorrow morning by phone if they're not watching tonight. And what we want to do is get the contract finalized, and then the ad hoc committee will discuss with the firm what they will be able to present in the way of their recommendations for how we proceed with some real substance at the December meeting.
So if you do give me the authority tonight, I will have Ms. Wang and Dr. Storti work on the contract tomorrow. And Ms. Wang today has assured me that if we work on that tomorrow, the contract should be ready by Friday at latest.
I move that we authorize Dr. Verdian to prepare that contract and get it executed promptly.
Second.
Any discussion? Vote, please. Passes 5-0 with 2 absent, and student trustee voting in favor. Thank you. Anything you want to add further, Dr. Verdian? Okay.
The only thing that I would want to add is let's get the contract executed expeditiously, and let's get as much accomplished between now and the next meeting. Scheduling, getting started perhaps on the draft of the statement of qualifications and so forth, so we can have some real meat to be working on at our next meeting.
When you look at the timeline, the schedule, and all that from the last search, that's the only one I've been involved with. And what, you've done 8, 10 of these, John? You must have done that many, right?
Not that
I don't know.
Not quite,
how many.
okay.
Not that many.
But
some.
the next thing that I think we need to really nail down is how we're going to make sure we get the community and constituent and stakeholders input.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's we can't let that slip. We got to move
Agreed.
ahead on that, and the outgrowth of that will be finalizing a position description. So
Agreed.
let's see. Now that's it for the action items, recommendations for approval. Superintendent President's report.
All right. Well, thank you very much, President Dr. Selvich. I want to start by congratulating Ms. Salva Triscumo. When you approved the personal item tonight, you did approve Ms. Salva Triscumo as Executive Director of Economic and Workforce Development, and Ms. Cumo is in the audience. All right. Congratulations again. You also approved Officer Alan Chan to be the police sergeant at the college. So. No, he's not here tonight. We have had an exciting month since our last meeting. You know that we did take part in the Great Shakeout earthquake drill on October 19th, and our emergency team learned much about our response to a natural disaster. We are now looking forward to our spring drill, which will focus on an active shooter drill on campus. You also know that enrollment has opened for our winter intersession, and we are moving at an impressive pace right now. We are currently at 42% capacity for the intersession, and we are glad that our community is responding to the intersession this year, and this is only the second year that we have the intersession given the long hiatus period that we had. Last week I was pleased to be joined by members of our board. Trustee Wah was there, Trustee Osterling, Trustee Selvage, for the Veterans Day observance at our memorial wall. We are proud of our veteran community, and we stand strong in celebrating their service. Yesterday was our annual Pathways Research Conference, which saw nearly 2,400 students taking part in a campus-wide festival of knowledge. Students worked in small teams to relate topics of interest to them, from chemistry to car repair, to levels of happiness, to the kinds of food that we eat, and you name the topic, it was there. Some students even discussed the One Book, One College program, and this year we had Dawn by Octavia Butler. And this research conference continues to be one of the best examples of the strength of our intellectual community. And I'm so glad to see it take place for another year. This Saturday, our college will be represented at the annual gala of the Asians and Pacific Islanders with Disabilities of California, demonstrating the mutually beneficial partnership this organization has with our college. This weekend will also mark another installment of our annual Million Meals Marathon, which collects food for hungry families and pets in our area. The proceeds are given to the Lancer Pantry and local food banks. Collections will run for 24 hours straight from 11 a.m. Saturday until 11 a.m. Sunday, and donations will be accepted in Lot 1. I encourage all of you to please give. At the end of this month, I will help unveil a new statue celebrating Jackie Robinson in a ceremony at the Rose Bowl. This statue is the first on the Rose Bowl grounds to depict a historical person, and I'm pleased to report that he is to be depicted wearing the uniform he wore as a Pasadena junior college student. We are very thrilled to have played a part in the athletic heritage of our city and excited to help celebrate Jackie's contributions to sports and our society. Dr. Bell will be present, and several members of our community will be at the event. President Selvage will be there as well, and I believe Trustee Osterlich will be there too. The event is Wednesday, November 29th at 2 p.m., and you're all invited to attend.
I wanted him to wear a John Muir High School football uniform in honor of our dominance in the turkey tussle.
We'll get to your report later.
I also want to add that through the help of Dr. Bell and also Trustee Wah, we will be working, it's almost certain that we will have a program together with the Sing Poly Corporation to prepare their staff who will be working in the new restaurant that they will be opening, right, Dr. Bell?
That's correct, Dr. Burton. We've struck an agreement with Simpoli to begin a hospitality management training module for them. We look to get it started as early as the beginning of the winter intersession, and the successful completers will, in fact, work with Simpoli at the end of the project in an internship to be able to be employed in either one of their hotels that are opening here in Pasadena, and also two that they have in the city of Los Angeles.
I think this is a great moment, and thank you, Dr. Bell, for your leadership in that. As you know, tomorrow, two of our board members and myself will be in San Jose at the Community College League of California conference. And I want to conclude my report by reading a letter that I received from Chancellor Eloy Oakley that speaks eloquently of one of our trustees, focusing on the work that this trustee has been doing statewide. Dear President Verdian, on behalf of the California Community Colleges Chancellor's Office, I want to express our appreciation for Linda Wah's commitment to advancing the effectiveness of our institutions through her work with the IEPI Advisory Committee. I know your trustee has spent considerable time and effort preparing for and participating in the advisory committee, including time traveling to Sacramento for meetings, collaborating, developing reports, and more. Thank you for sparing your wonderful and talented leadership in support of our institutions. We are grateful for the expertise and insight that Linda has provided as a member of the IEPI Advisory Committee. This work has helped lay the groundwork for programs and services that will have a positive impact on our entire system and ultimately benefit our students. To thank you adequately is impossible, but I hope you have gained some satisfaction in knowing that Linda's efforts are contributing to the creation of long-lasting, innovating changes at California's community colleges. Once more, thank you for your support. Cordially, Eloy Ortiz Oakley, Chancellor. Trustee Watt, thank you very much. And this concludes my report.
You can blush now.
Quite a surprise. I am pretty direct in my comments. So when Dr. Verdian said that he had a letter from Chancellor Oakley, I thought, oh, they're probably going to ask me to leave. So it's quite a nice surprise. So thank you very much.
We are now to the announcements portion of the meeting. First, we will have announcements by the shared governance representatives, starting with the Associated Students.
Hello and good evening, everyone. So one of the biggest things that Associated Students is working on right now is our Advocacy Week, which is currently going on. We will be wrapping it up tomorrow with our Student Empowerment Gathering. And the main objective for this event is to bring all the students together and acknowledge that despite all of our obstacles and different backgrounds, we're still here to pursue a higher education. There will be keynote speakers such as Dr. Tamayas, the equity director, as well as Gina Lopez from UGMA, and I believe Javier Carbajal from United Without Boundaries as well. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. We will now hear from the Management Association. Excuse me. Classified
Senate. Hi. Good evening, everybody. The Classified Senate just held a successful fall general meeting this past Monday. We had 30 classified professionals in attendance who representing various areas of the campus. The executive board of the Classified Senate also reviewed their delegations and disseminated information pertaining to previous AP and BPs approved and also upcoming agenda items. The foundation is going to be hosting Giving Tuesday, the Tuesday after Thanksgiving, and the Classified Senate will be participating by having a booth there. We're going to be doing carnation grams, and the proceeds from that will go to fund our Michael Buckhouse Scholarship as well as our Classified Senate Scholarship Fund. The Senate is planning to conduct our second workshop of our four-part professional development series. It will be entitled Professional Development, What is it? Who is eligible? This will take place on Thursday, December 7th from 12 to 1 in the Circadian, and we encourage the public to attend. And finally, I'm happy to report that the Senate has successfully reached all of the goals that we've set out for our first quarter. Thank you. This concludes my report.
Thank you. Now the Management Association.
Good evening. In keeping with my now month-old tradition, I'm happy this evening to recognize yet another of the contributions of my management colleagues. In this case, Tanisha Bailey is this month's Manager of the Month. Tanisha works as a supervisor in the Campus Use College Services area. She's been at PCC for 7 years, and prior to arriving here, Tanisha was employed in retail management. Certainly, her customer service first style is appreciated by all those she encounters. Her favorite thing about PCC, and honest to God, she made this up because I took it out as a quote, "I love the sense of community and dedication of all those who work for our students' success." Thanks, Tunisia, and again, congratulations.
Thank you. We will now hear from the faculty, the Academic Senate from Dr. Foster and her assistant.
My assistant doesn't know I'm going to make an announcement, which is a good thing. Good evening. I just wanted to report on some of the major items that we've approved in the Senate over the past month. One is our accreditation midterm report. We passed that with no disagreements whatsoever. So I'd like to thank Lenora Rogas and Crystal Cole-Ross for their leadership on that. It's a feat and not a fun feat. So we really appreciate both of them taking that on. The other is that we approved the Student Success Integrated Plan. So we'd like to thank Michaela and Sheila, both for chairing the Student Success Committee, and I'd like to thank all of the other members of the Student Success Committee as well for working on that. And then finally, we also passed a Flex AP that codified the process for our Flex program and an endorsement of a chair model. So we're really, really happy about that because that's been a long time in the making. So both of those are going to the union for negotiation, and hopefully that goes well. So thank you. That concludes my report.
Thank you. We will now hear from members of the Board of Trustees, beginning with Student Trustee Exian.
Good evening, everyone. I am currently working closely with the Office of Institutional Effectiveness in administering research on essentially why some students decide to drop a full course load and the initiatives we can take to accommodate students and prevent that trend from continuing. Associated Students and I gave the Office of Institutional Effectiveness feedback on the fall student survey, which was sent out to students today. I am also collaborating with the Vice President of Publicity from Associated Students in hosting our mental health awareness event taking place towards the end of November. And lastly, I will be chairing my first student trustee ad hoc committee meeting this coming Tuesday from 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. at the Cross Culture Center. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Hilsman.
Well, first of all, I just wanted to thank my fellow trustees, for a very productive and constructive discussion this evening on this beginning of our very important presidential search. And I'm looking forward to working with all of you on this important task, really our most important task as trustees. I've been working a lot with the foundation in my role as liaison. We've been meeting on everything from communications, as Alex will testify, to outreach. It's been a rewarding experience, and I just have to say that the capital campaign's going very well. One of the things we've discussed is expanding the role of the foundation to include not just their traditional role as providing scholarships, but also to address some of the affordability issues that our students have, and also the idea of supporting some of the professional development activities that are so important for our faculty. So we're looking to broaden out the role of the foundation in its support. We had a very good reception of the foundation, and President Verdian was there as well as some of our trustees, and Dean Sifoni gave a pretty inspiring talk about workforce development. And the reason that's so important is because many of the foundation members have really deep roots in the community, in the business community, and in all aspects of industry in Southern California. And I think that they were really inspired and enlightened by some of the work that I know we're beginning here at the college. We've been working on here at the college in terms of workforce development. So Salvatrice, if you're still out there, you've got a lot of support in your ongoing work. So thank you.
Trustee Osterling.
So 2 Fridays ago, I attended the same dinner that Hoyt just commented on, the PCC Foundation dinner. In addition to Dr. Rocky Schiffoni speaking about workforce development, we also had our Associated Student Presidents, Kaylee, give a presentation. afterwards, I commented that it was very smart move on the part of the foundation to add her to the board, because the students do a great job of our articulating what the important issues and needs are for the students. So thank you for your speech, and that was a smart move to have them add you to the board. And there was a lot of good discussion and comment on Dr. Schiaffone's speech, and which indicates to me that our foundation is keenly interested in the issue of workforce development. And then last Thursday, I had the honor to also attend the Veterans Day observation, which was attended by President Burdian and other trustees. And Doc Martin reminded us that while Memorial Day is a solemn occasion where we salute and thank those who died in service of the country, that Veterans Day is really supposed to be a celebration. And I thought it was a very excellent presentation. And one of our presenters was our very own trustee veteran, Dr. Selvage. That concludes my remarks.
Trustee Martin.
No report, thank you.
Trustee Wah.
So I have a couple of things I wanted to report, but first I did want to also congratulate the new director for our workforce, Salvatrice Como. So as you've heard, Salvatrice, many of our board members are very, very interested in the success of workforce. It continues to be one of the most vigorously discussed topics when I go up to the state meetings, and so it's one that we all have our eye on, and so we're looking forward to your plan and your strategy and from hearing about it. So, and I think that it really ties in so well with something that Trustee Hilsman said about our partners in industry and the internships and what we're doing now with Singpoli. So internships, I think, is a huge factor in the success of our students, and it's something that I actually saw at the Pathways conference that they had outside the quad. One of the student groups did a little study on, what has made the most effect for students, and that is being able to have any kind of work experience that then helps them tie what they've been learning in school. So I thought that was a really interesting thing. So I took a picture of 3 of the projects and posted them on my Facebook, but very good work. The other thing I want to talk about was I attended the Board of Governors meeting, and as I said, there continues to be a lot of discussion about workforce, but the other thing is about access for our students in the digital college, the OER, and so there's going to be a lot of funding, I think, and a lot of expectations for hitting some performance goals in that area. And they gave some really interesting statistics on the digital college. So where we were hearing that many of the community college students are not really succeeding, and so we have to do more work to get them to be more successful in digital college, we're now seeing that gap is closing. We're seeing that students get more access and they're getting used to digital access. We are being able to close the gap, and it is being really successful. So I'll be sending out some links to all of the trustees on this, and I hope that you'll read some of the work that's been done, not only here in California, but also in Arizona, which I think is now the top state for issuing digital access in higher education. And then, as Dr. Verdian said, we'll be having the League Conference, so we'll all be going up to that tomorrow. The Joint Caucuses will be having their second workshop, and so the Joint Caucuses are the African Americans, the Latinos, the veterans, and the Asian American Pacific Islanders. And so we'll be discussing common issues around student success for our populations. We'll then follow that with a town hall, which will just be roughly a drink. So we'll comp everybody a drink, but we'll have a continuation of that discussion. And then the Asian Americans will be having a cocktail reception, and because of Dr. Verdian's generosity in having PCC be an institutional member of the caucus, anyone who's coming to that conference, you're welcome. All the PCC people are welcome to come to that. And lastly, I just want to congratulate Trustee Osterling on a really excellent LACSTA meeting that we had at the end of last month. And one of the things Trustee Ostling did was he added a student. You're right.
Thank you.
Another fan of Trustee Austin. He had one of our student veterans come in to speak because he felt so strongly that we need to remember to keep our eye on the goals of student success and always have some sort of a student component at our meetings. And I thought that was a really smart thing to do. It was one that I heard from other trustees that they really appreciated and they thought was a good thing for Laxta. So thank you.
Well, let me just follow up and say our next LAXTA meeting is going to be a holiday party. It's going to be on Monday, December 11th, and everybody will be invited. And we also are going to have a student component of that program. We're going to have a choir from one of our member K-12 schools that sings holiday songs. So you would say that my the last meeting was a little bit better than my inaugural meeting held here at PCC?
Where we had a dinner meeting, but we forgot to order the dinner.
You didn't have to mention that.
She didn't have to. Well, thank you. Just a couple of comments myself. Yes, I was at the Veterans Day event over here at the wall, and one thing I'd like to point out is that the student who sang the national anthem a cappella, she had no accompaniment, she was really good. One of the great impressions I had when I became a trustee was the first commencement I attended, and I don't remember who was the soloist at that, but she was spectacular. And this student is following in her footsteps. We have a performing arts program that is second to none. So all of you performing arts people that are watching us right now, it's on tape. I also attended the Veterans Day event at Pasadena City Hall, and I talked to a number of people there. They knew I was trustee, and everybody went to PCC. You know, it's the thing around here. Everybody went to PCC. They got a family member who went to PCC. That's great. And Marshall Rowe, who is the current president of the Veterans Club here at PCC, was also in attendance. And finally, I also came by. Was it yesterday?
Yesterday.
Seems like it was a long time ago. Yesterday, and spent about an hour or so down there in the quad, looking at all the projects that the students in Pathways had done. And whoever came up with this idea did a great job. I mean, it's a great program. And I looked at all the various, excuse me, it's better, all the various projects. A lot of them had a common theme, and I talked with a lot of the students. I asked them how things went when they made their presentation in class and what kind of questions they had, and ran into a few Muir students. Muir is a feeder school to this institution. So it was all very gratifying, and I thought it was a great turnout. So at this point, proposed future board business meeting dates. Do we have any adjustments, Dr. Berdine?
No, the next board meeting is on December 13th, and that will not only be a regular business meeting, but it will also be the board's annual organizational meeting. And there will be some topics that will come up at that board meeting. Okay. And if I may say one last thing, since there will be no board meeting between now and the holiday party of the college, you are all invited to the holiday party on December 7th from 2 to 4 in this very room.
Thank you.
Oh, that's true.
Thank you, Dr. Berdine.
Yeah.
Proposed future agenda items. Do any trustees have any suggestions or recommendations for proposed future agenda items? Trustee Wise.
So I had mentioned this before, but since we're coming up on our reorganization meeting, I do want to put out again, I do think it's important for us to come together as a board and to at least talk about the goals. Normally it's something that the trustees, we come together early in August and September and help set goals for the college. and look at those performance measures. And so, since there's so much emphasis, even from the governor's office, from the state, from the legislature, and from across our community college system on performance measurements, I think it's important that we look at that. So I urge us to look at a date sometime in the future after the reorganization meeting.
And I also want to add, in January, we will be bringing to the board a presentation on the integrated plan between the students, triple SP and student equity. And so there will be a presentation to the board at that point on what we have found and the data that we have on that. Okay. And there will be a brief discussion on that as well.
Great. Thank you.
Trustee Martin.
Yes, I attended the facility master plan meeting, and I appreciated the way we had an opportunity in the meeting to express the members that were present. By the way, there weren't many members present, but that was understandable because there was a Dodger playoff game going on simultaneously. But I appreciated the way that we got to express what was important to us. I was also trying to remember, and I think it's my memory, where we are in the master plan, facility master plan process, what the time frame for that is. And then it occurred to me as we went through, of course, the discussion this evening, that we have two, amongst other things, but two really important things that are kind of moving between the superintendent search and the facility master plan. And as we heard when we discussed with our board consultant, Bryce Harris, obviously the superintendent is kind of the center of the facility master plan, and we're going to be in some kind of transition. And so in some ways, there's both a challenge for us and yet an opportunity for us to see how our search timing and our master plan timing work together. And there may be some things we certainly don't want to, we know that the track the search is on, we're not going to change that, we're not going to slow that down, but we may want to look at the timing of the master plan in respect to the timing of the search. So I would appreciate, I don't know if it's possible, but the two of you can work out as soon as possible. If it could be December, I don't know, it's up to you. But a report on the master plan process and timing, and then the idea of the search timing with an idea of a discussion on how we may want to alter the master plan timing based on the search.
I would also want to see that.
If I may add on that. Excuse me? You want me to add something to that? Once Trustee Selvage works with the search firm, and all of you work with the search firm to tell us your timeline with the search, we can work at the college level, work together with you to establish a plan on when the master plan, where we will be with the master plan and what will be left for the incoming president to handle, so that the incoming president has also a say in the master plan that that person will be implementing.
And just to follow up, it seems like I know recently we put out the job description for facilities director. It seems like the idea that we're in this master plan for facilities would be an important, it's an opportunity for some facility director who really wants to move something somewhere to really get in on the ground floor and be a part of that. Right. If I don't know how that timing is working out, but I know we're working on that. And similarly, when we go to put our superintendent advertisement together, it would be an important thing that I think we should mention, because there's an opportunity, depending on where we are in that timing, there really is an opportunity for the next real Jack Scott, who could come up with a vision and help do something maybe a little differently.
For the executive director of facilities, the search committee has concluded its work. It went through the whole process. They made their recommendation. Dr. Sordi and I
All right, so water under the bridge.
interviewed the finalists, and we will be bringing a name to the board for the December meeting.
Too late for that one, so.
Thank you. If there is nothing further, this meeting is adjourned.